The wedding hall glowed with soft lights, shimmering chandeliers, and the laughter of friends and families. It was one of those evenings that promised joy, music, and endless celebration. The smell of fresh flowers mingled with the aroma of fine food, and every table sparkled with delicate decorations and neatly folded napkins. Guests in elegant dresses and sharp suits moved around, chatting and smiling, creating a lively, warm atmosphere. Yet in the midst of all this cheer, one figure sat quietly by herself, slightly apart from the bustling crowd. She was a woman in a wheelchair, dressed in a deep green gown that contrasted beautifully with her dark hair and bright eyes. She looked calm, but there was a certain heaviness in her expression, as if she carried a world of thoughts that no one around her could see. She had arrived early, before most of the guests, to avoid the chaos at the entrance. Despite her position as a CEO, someone people admired and sometimes envied, she preferred to blend in quietly when it came to social events. She was used to people noticing her wheelchair first before anything else, and tonight, she wanted to avoid that feeling of being stared at. She wheeled herself slowly to a corner table near the back, where the lights were softer and the crowd a little thinner. The view was perfect. She could watch everything without feeling exposed. The room was alive with sound. A string quartet played softly near the stage, providing music that floated through the air without overwhelming conversation. Servers moved between tables carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Laughter and applause echoed as friends and family made speeches, and couples danced across the floor. She observed everything quietly, noting the small details. The way the groom's father adjusted his cufflinks nervously, the way children ran around with carefree energy, and the way the bride's eyes sparkled every time someone complimented her dress. She smiled occasionally, but it was a polite smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Even with all the joy around her, she felt a distance from it. Being in a wheelchair had shaped much of her life, both in obvious ways and in ways that no one else could see. She had grown accustomed to the careful glances, the whispered comments, and the occasional awkward questions. Some people were curious, others uncomfortable, and a few simply didn't know how to act. Tonight she wanted nothing more than to enjoy the wedding quietly, without being a spectacle. She watched as a group of women nearby laughed over a joke, their faces bright with excitement. She allowed herself a quiet longing, a small wish that someone would notice her not as a woman in a wheelchair but as a person who could laugh and feel and belong, just like anyone else. As she sat there, she thought about how her life had changed over the years. She had built her career from the ground up, starting with long hours, countless meetings, and difficult decisions that had often left her exhausted. She had proven herself in a male-dominated industry, fought through biases, and earned respect, sometimes grudgingly. Her success had brought her wealth and recognition, but it had also come with isolation. Friendships were rare and trust was often hard to come by. She had grown comfortable being alone, not because she wanted to, but because it had been simpler that way. Social gatherings like this reminded her of what she sometimes missed: the small connections, the casual laughter, the warmth of being with people who knew her beyond her title. Tonight, the wedding was different from the usual business events she attended. There were no contracts, no power plays, no expectations. Yet she still felt like an observer rather than a participant. Couples whispered to each other, friends toasted to lifelong memories, and families celebrated milestones. She watched a young couple at a nearby table lean in close, sharing a quiet joke that made them both giggle. For a moment she envied them, not for their romance, but for the effortless companionship, the simple joy of shared presence. She pushed the thought aside, reminding herself that she had her own life to cherish, her own victories, and her own moments of happiness. Still, a small, quiet yearning lingered, a hope that someone might notice her humanity tonight. As the evening went on, she became aware of subtle interactions around her. Some guests passed by her table, offering polite nods or smiles, but none stopped to engage in conversation. Servers were courteous but distant, treating her with professional politeness rather than warmth. She appreciated the courtesy, but it wasn't enough to fill the void she sometimes felt in social situations. She leaned back slightly in her wheelchair, letting her gaze wander across the room. A child ran past holding a balloon that bobbed in the air, and she couldn't help but smile at the pure joy in that small movement. It reminded her of moments from her own childhood, carefree and lighthearted, before the weight of responsibilities had taken hold. Her thoughts drifted further as she observed the bride and groom sharing their first dance. The bride's eyes shone with happiness, and the groom looked at her with a tenderness that made her chest ache with a familiar pang of longing. She thought about her own life, the choices she had made, and the opportunities she had seized. There had been achievements and accolades, sure, but there had also been sacrifices. Personal connections had often taken a back seat to her ambition. Now, in this moment, watching love unfold so openly, she felt both inspired and wistful. She wondered if she would ever have a moment like that. Not the wedding spotlight or grand gestures, but the quiet companionship, the gentle understanding of another person who truly saw her. As the night wore on, the music shifted to livelier tunes. Guests moved to the dance floor, laughing and twirling. The air was filled with energy and warmth, yet she remained at her table, a silent witness to the celebration. She noticed the subtle glances from other guests, some curious, some hesitant, but no one approached. She didn't mind their hesitation. She had long ago learned that human nature often leaned toward caution around what it didn't fully understand. Still, she felt the familiar loneliness creeping in, a quiet reminder that even surrounded by people, one could feel entirely alone. Then she noticed a small figure approaching, a child, perhaps 7 or 8, with bright eyes and an uncontainable curiosity. The child looked directly at her, unafraid, and offered a shy smile. She smiled back, and for a moment there was a silent understanding between them. A bridge built without words. The child's presence was refreshing, a tiny spark of life that reminded her of the innocence and simplicity she sometimes missed. The child lingered for a moment before darting back to the dance floor, laughter ringing through the air. She found herself watching, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the festivities and everything to do with human connection. As she continued to sit there, she thought about how unusual it was for her to attend such events without a companion. She had long ago accepted that she would often move through life independently, relying on her own strength and judgment. But tonight there was a faint wish for something different, a connection that didn't revolve around business, success, or appearances. Just someone to share a laugh, a smile, or a conversation with. She didn't even know who that person might be, but the thought lingered like a quiet hope in the background. Time passed slowly, marked by music, laughter, and the occasional cheer from the tables around her. She sipped her drink, savoring the taste and the moment, allowing herself to simply exist in the space without obligation. She noticed the smallest details, the way the candlelight flickered across the table, the gentle sway of guests on the dance floor, the faint hum of conversation blending with the music. It was a sensory tapestry that filled the room, yet her table remained a quiet island of calm. And in that calm she felt a strange mix of peace and longing. As she watched, a group of guests moved past her table, laughing over shared stories. She smiled politely as they passed, their joy infectious even from a distance. She thought about the ways people connected, the small gestures that carried so much meaning. A hand on a shoulder, a knowing glance, a shared laugh. These were the things that made life feel rich and full. She realized that tonight, she had been a silent observer of these moments, experiencing them vicariously rather than firsthand, and yet she didn't regret it. She had chosen this position, this quiet corner, to watch and reflect, to be part of the celebration in her own way. Even as she sat alone, she felt a subtle shift in the room, a sense that something might change. The evening was far from over, and she sensed that life had a way of surprising even the most careful planner. She didn't know what awaited her, but for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a possibility, a small, quiet connection that could turn her solitary evening into something meaningful. The thought brought a gentle smile to her face, a hint of anticipation in her eyes. As the music swelled and guests continued to celebrate, she remained at her table, quietly observing and reflecting. The room was alive with energy, yet she felt a growing sense of curiosity and openness. The night held potential, and she realized that even in moments of solitude, life had a way of bringing unexpected encounters. She wheeled herself slightly closer to the center of the room, not out of necessity but as a small gesture of readiness, a subtle sign that she was open to whatever might come next. The wedding, once a scene of quiet observation, now held a promise of change, a hint that her evening might soon be transformed in ways she could not yet imagine. Across the room, a man was guiding a small child by the hand, trying to navigate the crowded wedding hall without stepping on anyone's toes. He was tall, with a calm and approachable demeanor that immediately put people at ease. His daughter was energetic and curious, taking in every detail with wide eyes. She had already waved at 3 different tables, asked questions about the decorations, and managed to charm the staff into giving her a second piece of dessert. Her laughter echoed, light and unrestrained, cutting through the hum of conversation and music. The man glanced around the room, keeping one eye on his daughter and the other on the guests, quietly observing the celebrations. He had been to weddings before, some formal and some casual, but tonight felt different. He noticed small details, the way the groom kept adjusting his tie nervously, the subtle glances exchanged by friends who hadn't seen each other in years, and the way couples seemed to have their own private worlds even in a crowded room. It reminded him of how life was full of connections, some fleeting and some lasting, and how precious they could be if nurtured. His daughter tugged at his hand suddenly, pointing toward the woman in the wheelchair. "Daddy, look. She's all alone. Can she come play with us?" The father's eyes followed her small finger and landed on the CEO. She sat quietly, her gaze sweeping over the room without resting on anyone in particular. There was something about her presence that caught his attention, not because she was alone, not because she was in a wheelchair, but because there was a quiet strength in her posture, a subtle grace in the way she observed the world. It was a mix of dignity and curiosity that drew him in. He watched her for a few moments, trying to gauge the right way to approach. Weddings could be overwhelming for anyone, and he wanted to make the introduction smooth and respectful. He bent down slightly to speak to his daughter. "Do you want to go say hello?" She nodded eagerly, her face lighting up with excitement. "Okay," he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Let's go together." As they approached, the child waved shyly, and the woman in the wheelchair noticed immediately. Her eyes softened, and she offered a small smile, acknowledging their presence. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, just a quiet acceptance that was refreshing. The father smiled politely, introducing himself and his daughter. "Hi, we're just wandering around, and my daughter noticed you sitting alone. We thought maybe you'd like some company." The CEO's lips curved into a gentle smile. It wasn't forced. It was genuine, the kind that reached her eyes and momentarily eased the solitude she had been feeling. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate that." Her voice was calm, measured, and there was a warmth in it that invited conversation. She shifted slightly in her wheelchair to get a better angle, making sure she was fully engaged with the 2 new arrivals. The daughter took a small step closer, her curiosity unabated. "Do you like music?" she asked, pointing toward the dance floor where guests were laughing and moving to the rhythm of a lively tune. The CEO chuckled quietly, a sound that carried both amusement and warmth. "I do," she replied. "I've always loved music. It has a way of making you feel part of something bigger." The father nodded, noticing the ease with which she responded. There was no pretension, no defensiveness, just an honest exchange. He smiled, deciding to keep the conversation light and engaging. "Well, my daughter and I love dancing, even if we're not very good at it. Would you like to watch us try?" She laughed softly, a sound that mingled with the music in a way that felt natural and unforced. "I'd like that," she said. Her eyes followed the little girl as she twirled, her laughter contagious. The father watched his daughter, seeing how she instinctively connected with the woman, a bond forming effortlessly between them. It was a simple human connection, free from judgment or expectation, and it filled the CEO with a quiet sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. As they spoke, the conversation flowed naturally. The father asked about her interests, and she shared small details about her life, without revealing the full extent of her professional achievements. She preferred to be seen as herself in this moment, not the CEO, not the woman in a wheelchair, just a person sharing time with new acquaintances. He shared stories about his daughter, amusing incidents from parenting, and his experiences navigating life as a single parent. Each story brought laughter and lightness, dissolving the initial tension of meeting someone new. They moved around the table slightly, creating a small circle where all 3 could engage comfortably. The CEO noticed how the father was attentive to his daughter, how he balanced responsibility with warmth and humor. She found herself admiring his ability to connect so easily with those around him, a skill she often found challenging in her own life. His presence was calming, reassuring, and without effort, he had managed to make her feel at ease. The daughter, ever curious, asked about her wheelchair. Does it go really fast? She inquired, eyes wide with wonder. The CEO smiled, appreciating the child's unfiltered curiosity. It can be quick when I need it to be, she said, giving a small demonstration by gently pushing herself forward. The little girl giggled, delighted by the motion, and the father chuckled as well. It was a small, simple moment, but it broke the barrier of unfamiliarity and brought a sense of playful interaction to the table. Time seemed to slow for them, the chaos of the wedding fading into the background as they engaged in conversation. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all became part of a backdrop rather than a distraction. They talked about hobbies, favorite books, and places they wished to travel. Each exchange revealed layers of personality, small glimpses of character that built trust and familiarity. The father found himself genuinely intrigued by her perspective on life, her calm strength, and the quiet confidence she carried. The CEO, in turn, appreciated his grounded nature, his ability to make others feel comfortable, and the evident bond he shared with his daughter. As the evening progressed, the child decided it was time for another adventure, tugging at her father's hand with infectious energy. Can we get some dessert? She asked, eyes gleaming with anticipation. The father nodded, glancing at the CEO with a playful smile. Would you like to come with us? We're off to find the best desserts in the hall. She laughed again, the sound light and warm. I think I'd like that very much, she replied. Together they navigated the tables, sampling treats and sharing small bites, each moment building a subtle connection that went beyond words. Through these interactions, the CEO felt a shift within herself. The loneliness she had experienced earlier in the evening began to lift, replaced by a sense of belonging and quiet joy. It wasn't about being the center of attention or achieving something. It was about simple human connection, shared laughter, and mutual respect. The father and daughter had unknowingly created a space where she could simply be herself. Without expectation or judgment, they returned to the table after dessert, settling into comfortable conversation once again. The child leaned on the table, sharing a small story about school, and the CEO listened intently, offering encouraging words and gentle laughter. The father observed her engagement, appreciating the warmth she showed, and felt a growing sense of ease in her presence. For the first time that evening, they all felt a sense of inclusion, a shared understanding that transcended age, background, and circumstance. As the night continued, they noticed the dance floor filling with couples moving to a slower, more romantic tune. The father looked at the CEO, a spark of thought in his eyes. He hesitated for a moment, then asked gently, "Would you like to watch the dance with us? We can cheer from here or move a little closer if you want." She smiled softly, touched by the consideration. "I'd love to," she replied. They shifted their seats slightly, positioning themselves so they could enjoy the view without obstruction, the little girl bouncing slightly with excitement at the idea of watching the dancing. Watching the couples move gracefully across the floor, the CEO felt a quiet sense of admiration for the way people could express emotion through movement. It reminded her that connection came in many forms, not always through words but through presence, gestures, and shared experiences. The father noticed her attention to detail, the subtle ways she observed the world, and he found himself drawn to the depth of her perception. The little girl tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "She's really nice, Daddy." He smiled, feeling a warmth that came from witnessing a genuine connection forming. By the end of the evening, they had shared small stories, laughter, and observations that created a comfortable rhythm between them. The CEO realized that the night had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated. She had come expecting to be alone, observing from the sidelines, but now she found herself engaged, connected, and genuinely enjoying the company of two new friends. The father had not only brought his daughter's energy into her evening, but had also shown her that connection could be effortless when approached with sincerity and respect. As the last notes of the music played and guests began to leave the dance floor, the CEO felt a quiet gratitude. She had discovered that even in moments of solitude, life had a way of introducing new experiences, new people, and unexpected warmth. She looked at the father and daughter, feeling a gentle anticipation for what the next moments of the evening might hold, a sense that her solitary night could transform into something meaningful. And in that subtle, unspoken understanding, a small spark of possibility ignited, a feeling that the night was far from over and that perhaps her evening of quiet observation was about to take a remarkable turn. As the night moved on, the wedding atmosphere shifted into a softer, more intimate energy. The music slowed. Couples held each other close on the dance floor, and laughter became quieter, blending into gentle conversation. The CEO remained at her corner table, though she no longer felt isolated. The father and his daughter had brought warmth and light into her evening, a sense of connection she hadn't anticipated when she arrived. She observed the way they moved through the room, how his daughter's playful energy drew smiles from strangers, and how he handled it all with quiet confidence and kindness. Each small interaction reminded her of the value of human connection, and she felt herself relaxing in a way she rarely allowed. The father noticed her gaze and offered a gentle smile, acknowledging the moment without words. It was a small gesture, but it carried significance. She returned the smile, feeling the first genuine bridge forming between them. The little girl leaned closer to her, whispering excitedly, "Daddy says you're coming with us to dance, right?" The CEO's lips curved into a soft, amused smile. "I suppose I am," she said, feeling a flutter of anticipation. Her words were simple, but they carried a sense of openness she rarely expressed in public settings. He helped her maneuver slightly closer to the dance floor, careful to respect her space while including her in the energy around them. The little girl twirled nearby, urging her to watch and enjoy the dancers. The CEO's eyes lit up as she observed the movement, the expressions, and the subtle interactions between couples. For a moment, she felt as though she was seeing a part of life she had been missing, joy that was effortless and natural, not tied to work or obligation. She noticed details others might overlook. The way a groom held his partner's hand just slightly tighter during a spin, the quiet laughter shared between friends, the small nods that conveyed understanding without words. It was a sensory experience, and for once she wasn't analyzing or judging. She was simply taking it in. The father watched her carefully, noting the way her eyes softened, the subtle smiles that escaped despite herself. He realized she was not just observing the moment, but truly feeling it. The little girl noticed too, and her excitement grew, tugging gently at her father's sleeve. "Daddy, she's really happy. Can we ask her to dance?" The father hesitated for just a moment, then nodded, a thoughtful smile crossing his face. He turned to the CEO, a question in his eyes. "Would you like to join us on the dance floor? It doesn't have to be fancy, just for fun." The CEO felt a mix of surprise and delight. Dancing was not something she often did at social events, and the thought of joining in made her heart beat a little faster. She glanced at the child, who was practically bouncing with excitement, and at the father, whose presence radiated calm encouragement. "I'd like that very much," she replied softly, feeling a small thrill at the idea. He offered a steadying hand as she positioned herself for movement, ensuring she felt safe and comfortable. The little girl took her hand eagerly, and together, they moved toward the dance area, creating a small trio that drew smiles from nearby guests. Once on the dance floor, the CEO allowed herself to feel the rhythm, the energy of the room, and the warmth of being included. She laughed quietly as the little girl attempted a twirl and nearly lost balance, catching herself with a triumphant giggle. The father joined in, guiding her gently, sharing in the laughter and joy. The CEO felt a sense of liberation, a release from the expectations and pressures that usually accompanied her presence in public spaces. For the first time that evening, she felt free to simply be herself, to enjoy the moment without pretense. As the trio danced, conversation flowed naturally. The father asked light questions about her interests, and she responded with ease, sharing small stories from her life. He listened attentively, offering genuine reactions and follow-up questions that encouraged deeper conversation. The child added occasional commentary, her innocence and honesty bringing humor and warmth to the exchange. Through this interaction, a bond began to form, subtle yet significant. It was built not on appearances or status, but on shared human experience, empathy, and the joy of simple connection. At one point, the music shifted to a slower, more melodic tune. Couples around them paired off, swaying gently. The father glanced at the CEO, his eyes conveying a silent question. She nodded slightly, understanding without words. He guided her into a gentle sway, adjusting to her comfort and pace. The little girl watched, fascinated, occasionally whispering observations and encouragement. The CEO felt a wave of emotion she hadn't anticipated: comfort, inclusion, and the thrill of being noticed without expectation. The world outside this moment, the titles, the pressures, and the judgments, seemed to fade into irrelevance. The dance ended with applause from those nearby, but the trio lingered, not ready to let the moment dissolve. They moved back to the table, laughter and conversation continuing. The father's daughter shared a small story about her school day, and the CEO listened with genuine interest, offering comments and encouragement. Her laughter blended naturally with theirs, a sound she realized she had not allowed herself to express so freely in a long time. The father observed, quietly appreciating the transformation taking place. A woman who had arrived alone and reserved, now engaged and smiling, present in a way that was rare and authentic. They spent the next hour exploring small parts of the reception together. The CEO helped the little girl balance on a small bench while sampling desserts, and they discussed favorite flavors and textures. The father shared amusing anecdotes about parenting mishaps, and the CEO offered her own humorous observations from experiences in her career and personal life. Each exchange was simple, human, and meaningful, creating a sense of shared experience that transcended age, background, and circumstance. She felt seen not for her title or her abilities, but for the person she was at that moment, a woman capable of laughter, empathy, and genuine connection. The atmosphere shifted again as speeches and toasts began. The CEO observed quietly, noticing the heartfelt emotions expressed by friends and family. She felt a deep appreciation for the subtle gestures and words that carried meaning beyond their surface. The father leaned closer, sharing a whispered comment about the sentiment of one of the speeches. She responded with a smile, grateful for his presence and the ease with which he allowed her to engage. The little girl bounced excitedly beside them, her enthusiasm infectious, adding warmth and energy to every interaction. By the time the reception started winding down, the CEO felt a profound sense of gratitude. The evening had begun with solitude and observation, but now it was marked by connection, laughter, and shared experience. She had learned that genuine interaction could arise in unexpected ways, through patience, openness, and the willingness to embrace simple moments. The father had provided not just companionship, but a bridge into this new experience, and his daughter had added the lightness and joy that made it all possible. In their presence, she discovered a side of herself that she had long neglected, the ability to relax, enjoy, and participate without expectation. As guests began to leave and the music softened, the trio lingered at the table, savoring the final moments. The CEO reflected on the shift in her evening, feeling a sense of anticipation for what might come next. The father and daughter had shown her the power of human connection, the beauty of unexpected encounters, and the joy that comes from being present in the moment. She realized that while the night had begun in solitude, it was now filled with potential, a sense that her life could hold more than achievements and responsibilities, that it could also include laughter, companionship, and shared experiences. The little girl leaned on her father's arm, whispering softly, "I like her. Can she come with us again sometime?" The CEO smiled warmly, touched by the innocence and honesty of the comment. "I think I'd like that very much," she replied, feeling a genuine connection that had begun in the most unexpected way. The father nodded, a thoughtful smile on his face, understanding the significance of this simple yet meaningful bond. As they prepared to leave the reception area, the CEO felt a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She had come to the wedding expecting solitude, observation, and polite smiles, but she was leaving with laughter, connection, and a spark of joy that had been absent from her life for far too long. The father and daughter had not only included her in their evening, but had shown her the value of openness, the magic of small gestures, and the potential for meaningful human connection in the most unexpected places. In that moment, as they wheeled and walked through the softly lit hall, the CEO felt a subtle shift within herself. The loneliness that had weighed on her at the beginning of the evening had been replaced by a sense of belonging. She realized that life had a way of offering surprises, and that sometimes the simplest gestures, an invitation, a smile, or a shared laugh, could transform an entire experience. The father's presence had been steady, his daughter's energy infectious, and together they had created a space where she could simply be herself. The night had become more than a wedding. It had become a turning point, a moment of human connection that she would carry forward long after the last dance had ended. The evening had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The wedding hall now bathed in soft, golden light as conversation slowed and music became gentler. The CEO, who had arrived quietly and alone, now felt an unusual sense of belonging. The father and his daughter had brought laughter, energy, and warmth into her evening, transforming what could have been a solitary night into a shared experience filled with genuine connection. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she could let go of the careful composure that accompanied her public persona and simply be herself. The father glanced at her, noticing the subtle changes in her demeanor, the way her shoulders relaxed, the soft smile lingering on her face, the occasional sparkle in her eyes that suggested amusement or curiosity. He had been quietly impressed by her throughout the evening. There was a quiet confidence in her, a calm strength that didn't need to announce itself loudly but could be felt in her presence. Her laughter, soft and genuine, had become a melody that complemented the music and energy of the room. It was a sound that drew him in, one he wanted to hear more often beyond the constraints of a wedding hall. They spent the next part of the evening sharing stories from their lives. The CEO spoke about her work, not in a boastful way, but describing the challenges she had faced and the lessons she had learned. Her words were thoughtful, revealing not just achievements but the resilience and determination that had shaped her journey. The father listened intently, nodding in understanding, occasionally offering insights from his own experiences as a single parent navigating life with care and responsibility. The exchange was effortless, a natural flow of conversation that built trust and familiarity without pressure or expectation. The little girl, sensing the growing bond between her father and the CEO, contributed eagerly to the conversation. She asked questions about her favorite foods, her hobbies, and whether she liked animals. The CEO responded with warmth and patience, answering honestly and sometimes playfully, making the little girl giggle with delight. She shared a story about a dog she had grown up with, describing its quirks and the joy it brought into her life. The child listened intently, occasionally adding her own experiences with pets, creating a lively and heartfelt discussion that brought them all closer together. At one point, the father suggested they move to a quieter part of the hall to enjoy the remainder of the evening, without the distractions of the main festivities. The CEO agreed, appreciating the thoughtful consideration. They wheeled and walked together to a small lounge area, dimly lit and filled with comfortable seating. The atmosphere was serene, offering a chance for deeper conversation and reflection. Here the CEO felt even more at ease, the presence of her new companions allowing her to speak freely and authentically. As they settled, the father asked about her interests outside of work. She spoke of books she loved, places she wished to travel, and small passions she had pursued over the years. He shared his own interests, from hiking trips with his daughter to quiet evenings at home, reading and cooking. The conversation was light but meaningful, each detail revealing more about the person behind the professional title, the woman beyond the wheelchair. They discovered shared values, a mutual appreciation for family, integrity, and humor. Each revelation created a stronger connection, a sense that they were not just passing acquaintances but individuals beginning to understand each other on a deeper level. The little girl, ever curious, leaned on the CEO's wheelchair, whispering questions about her life and experiences. The CEO responded with gentle honesty, creating an atmosphere of trust and warmth. The father watched this interaction, feeling a profound sense of respect for the CEO's ability to connect with his daughter. She was patient, attentive, and kind, qualities he valued deeply and rarely saw expressed with such natural grace. The child's laughter and questions acted as a bridge, facilitating comfort and trust between the adults in a way that felt effortless and genuine. Time passed almost unnoticed. They spoke of dreams and aspirations, small triumphs and challenges faced along the way. The CEO reflected on moments of solitude in her life, sharing the ways she had learned to navigate spaces where she often felt different. The father listened with empathy, offering support and understanding, never judgment. Through this dialogue, the CEO felt a sense of acceptance she had rarely experienced. It wasn't about status or appearance. It was about human connection, shared experience, and genuine respect. As the night progressed, the energy of the reception subtly shifted. Couples returned to their conversations, some beginning to say their goodbyes while others lingered to savor the final moments. The CEO noticed the father's attentive presence beside her, the subtle gestures that conveyed care and consideration. She felt a growing admiration, not just for his character, but for the quiet way he balanced responsibility with warmth and humor. In turn, the father recognized her depth, her thoughtfulness, and the authenticity she brought to every interaction. It was an unspoken recognition of mutual respect and interest, a silent acknowledgement of the connection forming between them. They shared a moment of quiet reflection, observing the room and the people within it. The CEO remarked on how weddings often revealed the best in people, the way families and friends came together to celebrate, the small gestures of kindness, and the joy that radiated from simple human interactions. The father nodded in agreement, sharing a memory from a wedding he had attended with his daughter in the past, highlighting the importance of these celebrations in creating lasting memories. Their conversation flowed naturally, moving from light-hearted stories to moments of thoughtful insight, each exchange deepening their understanding and connection. The little girl, sensing a lull in conversation, decided to bring a touch of humor to the moment. She asked the CEO a series of whimsical questions, from her favorite ice cream flavor to what she would do if she could fly for a day. The CEO responded with playful imagination, laughing freely and engaging fully with the child's curiosity. The father observed, smiling at the dynamic, appreciating the way the CEO could connect across generations with ease and sincerity. These moments, small yet meaningful, further solidified the bond forming between them, creating an atmosphere of trust, warmth, and shared enjoyment. As the evening drew closer to its conclusion, the father posed a question that had been lingering in the back of his mind. He looked at the CEO with gentle curiosity and asked, "Would you like to be my +1 for the rest of the evening? Not just here, but at future gatherings too?" The question was simple yet profound, a direct invitation that carried both warmth and respect. The CEO paused, considering the offer. She had not expected such a gesture, and yet it resonated deeply with her. The thought of sharing more experiences, laughter, and moments with these two kindred spirits brought a genuine smile to her face. "I would like that very much," she replied softly, her words carrying sincerity and a quiet sense of joy. The father smiled, feeling a sense of relief and happiness at her response. The little girl clapped her hands in delight, her excitement unmistakable. Together, they shared a moment of quiet celebration, recognizing the significance of this small but meaningful commitment. It was more than a simple invitation. It was the beginning of a deeper connection, a bond built on trust, shared experience, and the willingness to embrace human connection without hesitation. They spent the remainder of the evening in easy companionship, enjoying the final moments of the reception. Conversations flowed effortlessly, laughter punctuated the quiet exchanges, and a sense of warmth and belonging permeated their interactions. The CEO felt a profound sense of gratitude, recognizing the shift that had occurred within her since her arrival. What had begun as a solitary evening of observation had transformed into a night of connection, joy, and the potential for lasting friendship or something more. As guests began to depart, the trio lingered, reluctant to let the evening end. The CEO reflected on the unexpected turns of the night, the simple gestures that had opened the door to connection, and the genuine warmth she had experienced. She realized that human interaction, when approached with sincerity, patience, and openness, could create moments of profound meaning and joy. The father recognized the same truth, appreciating the CEO's authenticity, kindness, and willingness to engage fully in the present moment. The little girl, ever curious and lively, had been the catalyst, her innocence and openness bridging the initial distance and fostering a sense of inclusion and trust. When the time came to leave, they did so slowly, savoring the final moments of their shared experience. The CEO felt a sense of lightness, a release from the solitude she had anticipated, replaced by a growing anticipation for the connections yet to come. She had discovered the power of simple gestures, the impact of genuine attention, and the joy that arises when one allows oneself to be present with others. The father, walking beside her, felt a deep respect and admiration, grateful for the warmth and authenticity she had brought to the evening. Together they stepped into the night with a sense of possibility, the promise of continued connection and shared experiences stretching ahead. The night outside was calm, the city lights casting a soft glow over the streets. But inside the wedding hall, the final moments of the celebration were filled with warmth, laughter, and the gentle hum of contentment. The CEO, who had begun the evening alone and observing, now found herself fully engaged, surrounded by companionship she had not anticipated. She felt lighter, freer, and genuinely happy, a stark contrast to the quiet anticipation that had accompanied her arrival. The father and his daughter had completely changed the tone of her night, offering connection, laughter, and unexpected comfort. As they prepared to leave the hall, the father paused to offer a steadying hand, ensuring she felt supported while navigating the small crowds of departing guests. The little girl skipped beside them, her energy boundless, occasionally stopping to wave goodbye to friends or comment on the twinkling lights that decorated the exit. The CEO smiled at the child's enthusiasm, feeling a warm sense of inclusion, and a subtle reminder of how small gestures and innocent curiosity could break barriers and create bonds. Once outside, the cool evening air was refreshing, a gentle contrast to the warmth and energy of the reception. The CEO took a deep breath, savoring the moment, the lights of the city twinkling around them. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time, a quiet contentment rooted not in achievement or recognition, but in genuine human connection. The father glanced at her, his expression soft, reflecting a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and warmth. He had seen the subtle transformation in her throughout the evening, the easing of tension, the growing smiles, the laughter that had become natural. He felt a growing sense of anticipation, wondering where this new connection might lead. The little girl tugged at his sleeve, her eyes bright with excitement. "Daddy, can we do this again sometime? She's really fun." The CEO laughed gently, a sound that blended perfectly with the night air, light and unrestrained. "I'd like that very much," she said, feeling the sincerity of the statement. The father nodded, appreciating the honesty and openness, and felt a quiet sense of relief and happiness at her words. It was rare to find people with whom interactions felt effortless, genuine, and mutually respectful. Tonight had provided precisely that experience. They walked together toward the waiting cars, the conversation flowing naturally. The CEO spoke about small observations from the evening, the way children laughed without self-consciousness, the subtle gestures that conveyed affection among family members, and the moments that had touched her heart. The father shared his own reflections, emphasizing the importance of enjoying life's simple pleasures, embracing spontaneity, and valuing genuine connections over appearances. Each exchange deepened the sense of mutual understanding and trust, reinforcing the bond that had grown throughout the evening. As they reached the cars, the CEO paused for a moment, looking back toward the wedding hall. She reflected on the evening's unexpected journey, the way a simple decision to attend had led to profound connection. The father noticed her pause and asked gently, "Are you all right?" She turned to him, smiling warmly. "I am," she said softly. "Tonight has been more meaningful than I could have imagined. Thank you for including me." He smiled, a quiet, understanding smile that acknowledged both the gratitude and the unspoken connection between them. "It was my pleasure," he replied. "I think my daughter and I enjoyed your company just as much." The little girl bounced happily, her hands clasped together. "We should all hang out again, please," she exclaimed, and the CEO chuckled, nodding in agreement. As they settled into the cars for the ride home, the atmosphere remained light and filled with quiet joy. The father ensured the little girl was comfortable, buckled safely into her seat, while the CEO positioned herself comfortably in the wheelchair space prepared for her. Conversation continued, gentle and easy, punctuated by laughter and shared observations from the evening. They discussed future plans, little outings they might enjoy together, and the simple pleasures they could explore as friends, building the foundation for ongoing connection and shared experiences. During the drive, the CEO felt a profound sense of contentment. She realized that her life, though filled with achievement and success, often lacked the depth of personal connection that had been missing for so long. Tonight had reminded her of the value of authentic interaction, of being seen and appreciated for who she was, beyond professional titles or public perception. She glanced at the father, noting the warmth and attentiveness in his presence, and felt a quiet hope for the future, one filled with friendship, laughter, and the possibility of something deeper. The little girl, sensing the mood, leaned toward the CEO and whispered, "I'm glad you came tonight. You made it fun." The CEO smiled, touched by the innocence and sincerity of the comment. "I'm glad too," she replied softly. The father watched, appreciating the natural connection forming between the two, and felt a sense of admiration for the CEO's ability to engage with both his daughter and himself in such a warm, genuine manner. When they reached the CEO's home, they paused, not wanting the evening to end abruptly. She expressed her gratitude once again, thanking both the father and the daughter for including her, for the laughter, and for the sense of belonging she had experienced. The father smiled, responding with a gentle reassurance that the evening had been mutually enjoyable and that they looked forward to future moments together. The little girl waved enthusiastically, her excitement contagious, and the CEO waved back, her smile warm and sincere. As she entered her home, the CEO reflected on the evening in quiet contemplation. She thought about how a simple decision, to attend a wedding, to allow herself to be present, had led to unexpected joy, laughter, and human connection. She realized that life often offered such moments, but it required openness, patience, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. Tonight had reminded her of the beauty of human interaction, the magic of shared experience, and the potential for meaningful connection in the most unanticipated places. In the following days, the CEO found herself looking forward to future interactions with the father and his daughter. She anticipated the laughter, the shared stories, and the simple pleasures of spending time together. The evening had not only provided companionship, but had also sparked a sense of curiosity and hope, a recognition that life could be enriched through genuine connection and mutual respect. She felt a quiet excitement for what lay ahead, knowing that the bonds formed that night were only the beginning of a deeper, more meaningful relationship. She began to notice subtle changes in herself. She laughed more freely in her daily life. She approached social interactions with renewed openness, and she carried a lightness in her step that had been absent for years. The memory of the father and daughter, their warmth, humor, and kindness became a touchstone, reminding her of the joy found in genuine connection. She reflected on the evening's events, recognizing that the simplicity of shared experience, the laughter, the stories, the playful interactions could transform not just a single night, but her approach to life. In the weeks that followed, they continued to meet, sometimes for casual outings, sometimes for shared meals or quiet walks. The bond deepened, evolving naturally, without pressure or expectation. Each meeting reinforced the mutual respect, warmth, and joy that had begun on that wedding night. The CEO found herself looking forward to these moments, appreciating the balance of friendship, humor, and sincerity. The father valued her presence, her insight, and the genuine connection they shared, while his daughter's boundless energy and innocence continued to bring light and laughter into their interactions. Through these experiences, the CEO learned to embrace human connection more fully, allowing herself to engage with openness and authenticity. She realized that life's most meaningful moments often came from simple gestures, shared laughter, and the willingness to be present. The evening at the wedding had been transformative, a turning point that shifted her perspective and opened her heart to new possibilities. She felt a sense of gratitude, not just for the connections made, but for the reminder that life's richness was found in the people we meet and the moments we share.